Hello, and welcome to another devlog for our game Karveros. If you're new to this channel, you may not know what Karveros is, and so real quick, I'll just tell you what Karveros is. Karveros is a Souls-inspired action game. We plan for it to have some survival aspects, exploration, and we are hoping to make it multiplayer. We really want there to be PvP. Karveros has been in development for about 2 years now, but it wasn't until last year that the full vision for the game really came together. I kind of do the lead development in Unity, a lot of the programming, and my friend Alex, he handles a lot of the concept art, world design, 3D modeling now, and now he's starting to pick up the animating and rigging for a lot of those models as well. So now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the meat of what this devlog will be about. So for this devlog, I started working on creating more of a style for the game to match some of the art designs that Alex does, and as well as for the world that Karveros is actually taking place in. Karveros is actually taking place in the world of a comic that Alex is writing, and so we've been discussing the idea of creating more of a kind of Toon comic-like style for the game, similar to almost something like Borderlands. So I started working on developing a Toon shader in Unity to work with our universal render pipeline, but the main difference you'll see with the Toon shader compared to the original rendering is that now our opaque colors on our materials and different objects create these kind of thicker separated layers on an object based on the lighting that's hitting it. This helps create more of a cell shading effect, almost as if you were coloring something on paper. You would kind of do something like this. I can also adjust all these different properties and how the cell shading will look, and also how lines will render around objects. And so that's the second part to the Toon shader that I've created here, is it creates these outlines around objects, and I can affect the thickness of this outline, I can fade the outline, and so those are kind of the main differences between what the Toon shader is doing and what our original render was doing. So to make this, I just used Unity's shader graph. I believe this is a unlit shader graph, and it's using a opaque rendering, so that's, I believe it's like 2000, and I'm doing it after I render transparency because I don't want it to affect post-processing effects. One of the big issues with using this shader is that it won't render transparent. For example, the default particles for Unity's particle system, those are all transparent. So basically a lot of our particles weren't working anymore, and so I kind of just created a quick, simple material that could replace them. And so right now it doesn't look great because they're just rendering basically squares. So that was one of the things I had to change. The other one was our water. It's supposed to render at, I believe, 3000 for that shader. And since we can't do that, I had to change the shader to run at a lower rendering and not run transparent, which means I lost the actual depth effect that the water was creating. And so to get around this, I actually just messed around with the outlines to come out a little bit more on the depth for things that would be underneath the water. So hence the grass and stuff kind of sticks out more and helps create the depth of the water. Those were some tricky things I had to work around, so if you're thinking about creating a Toon shader effect, keep that in mind. You won't be able to use transparency, you'll have to focus on using opaque materials. There's still a lot of other things as far as how we want the style to look that we still need to apply and mess around with, and we'll kind of start to see this more as I start to work with the actual 3D assets that Alex is making and I start implementing them in with this Toon shader. Let me know what you think about the differences between the two. I'm kind of liking a thin outline with a lower amount of cell shading, so it's almost just kind of in between a Toon kind of look and your normal rendering. I hope you enjoyed this devlog. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Having a following and support is really important, and we really need to grow that as we get closer to launch a Kickstarter for this game. So, and if you haven't seen our other videos, go check them out. I'm starting to do our devlogs differently than how I did last year. Check those older videos out and let me know which ones you like more so we get an idea of how to keep proceeding with these. Thank you for your time. Bye.